But all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we ask His peace and blessings upon His servant and His final messenger Muhammad, upon his family and his companions, and those who follow them in faith and practice until the last day. Inshallah ta'ala, brothers and sisters, we're going to begin here momentarily. We have a brief presentation regarding the Hajj, and mashallah, as we are all aware that we are coming towards the end of the month of Dhul Qa'dah, and that means that in just a short amount of time, in 1 week, inshallah, we will be ushering in Dhul Hijjah. And this, of course, is the last month of the Islamic calendar, and this is the month in which the Hujjaj, or the pilgrims, will be performing Hajj, inshallah ta'ala, bi'idnillah. So it has been, mashallah, for the last 2 or 3 years, we have been having the Hajj workshop just to remind one another, and for those whom they are planning for the journey, just a brief description to them of what they can expect, and for those of us whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not yet write for us to perform the Hajj, that inshallah ta'ala we get some idea about what will be taking place when inshallah ta'ala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that opportunity. So inshallah ta'ala, for the sisters who would like to join us here in the main prayer area, we have put the partition so that they can see the PowerPoint. I don't know how visible it is from the ladies area on the cameras, but inshallah ta'ala, if they would like to join us here, then they can do so at this time, inshallah. So I'm going to be, inshallah ta'ala, kind of interacting with the screen here. Give me the video while they come. Let me skip to it. Okay, right back. I'm supposed to have it until first. Supposed to have it in the beginning. No. So inshallah ta'ala, as we all know, Hajj is one of the pillars of Islam, and oftentimes it's referred to as the 5th pillar of Islam. And this because, and Allah knows best, because it was the last of those 5 pillars that was made an obligation upon the Muslims. And of course, the statement of the Prophet ﷺ that we will come to also regarding the Hajj. So when we think about the Hajj, and the first thing that we want to discuss is the fact that Hajj is an obligation for each of us. And this is established in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also in the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and also through ijma, or consensus of the Sahaba and also the scholars, hafidhahumullah, rahimahumullah. So regarding the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن أول بيت ولي للناس للذي ببكة مباركا وهدى للعالمين فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم ومن دخله كان آمنا ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. So this, mashallah, this ayah from Surah Ali Imran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that verily the first house of worship established for the human beings is the one at Becca. And Becca is an ancient name for Mecca. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues in English, meaning blessing and guidance for all the worlds. In it are clear signs, the station of Ibrahim. And whoever enters it is safe and secure. And to Allah is owed by mankind the obligation of Hajj for the one who possesses the means to perform the journey. And whoever turns away and rejects faith, for verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is independent of His creation. So in this ayah, mashallah, it becomes clear that the Hajj is an obligation that we owe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ, and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or for Allah upon the human beings, Hajj al-Bayt, or upon mankind, is that we would visit or make this journey of Hajj. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the clarifier, man istata' alayhi sabila, for the one who has the ways and means to do so. So this is one of the things that is discussed amongst the ulama, that what is the istita'a, and what is the capability or the ability to make Hajj, what establishes that, and that's kind of a long discussion. But for all of us, and it is an obligation that we owe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So soon as we have the ways and means of fulfilling that obligation, then it becomes incumbent upon us. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, that this is an obligation for all of the human beings. Now, with that said, we should understand that there are certain shurut, there are certain conditions that have to be met before the person, the individual, can fulfill that obligation. One of those conditions is Islam, and that the person has to establish the kalima, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. So there is no contradiction in the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ, that for Allah, or to Allah upon the human beings, or the mankind, is the obligation of Hajj, because this is inclusive and includes all human beings. But yet we know that from the time of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam until the present day, that only those whom they establish the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they bear witness that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, that they are given or allowed the opportunity to perform Hajj, because this is one of the conditions that must be met before the person performs the Hajj, that they have to establish Islam as their deen, as their way of life. From the Sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ, we have the statement on the authority of Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, that he said, and from the beginning of that hadith, and where he said in the Arabic language, Bunya al-Islam ala khams, that Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said that Islam is built upon 5. And then he mentioned, that is, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the 5 pillars of Islam, ash-shahadatain, and the establishment of salah, the payment of salah, of zakah, Hajj al-Bayt, liman istata' alayhi sabil, the performance of Hajj for the one who has the ways and means to do so, and Sawm Ramadan, the fasting in the month of Ramadan. So that also is an indication of the obligatory nature of the Hajj, that it is incumbent upon every Muslim to perform the Hajj at least once in his lifetime. And that takes us to the second narration, whether on the thought of Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, that he said that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, and he went after delivering a khutbah, he said, Ya ayyuhan nas, O you people, Furida alaykum al-Hajj, and that Hajj has been made incumbent upon you, or obligatory upon you, to the end of the hadith. And in that particular narration, it continues to say that one of the Sahaba, radiallahu anhu ajma'in, that he stood up and he said to the Prophet ﷺ, "Afakul am, is it every year, O Messenger of Allah?" And the Prophet ﷺ was quiet. And then he again repeated, "Is it every year?" And the Prophet ﷺ was quiet. And then he repeated another time, "Is it every year?" And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, "Lo qultu na'am, la furida alaykum wa mastata'tum," aw kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam. That the Prophet ﷺ then told him that if I was to say yes to your question, then it would become an obligation upon you every year, and you cannot do it. So, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was not made incumbent upon us every year, but it is made incumbent upon us only once in the lifetime. So this is, mashallah, a mercy from Allah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he only made the Hajj once in his lifetime. And mashallah, Hajj al-Wida, and as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made in the last year of his life. And sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And we take our understanding and methodology of how to perform the Hajj from that Hajj of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, it's noteworthy to mention that the Hajj was something that was being done even before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, we read in the Quran and Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions regarding Ibrahim alayhi salam, and how Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise the foundations of the Kaaba. And as mentioned in the ayah mentioned before, that the Kaaba, the first house of worship established on the face of the earth for the human being. So the Kaaba had been established from before by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and rebuilt according to some of the riwayat, and rebuilt, and Allah knows best, by Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. And from that time, the people were making Hajj. But after the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the people, their faith and their understanding of the deen of Allah, it deteriorated, and they began to establish the shirk and the worship of idols. So by the time of the birth of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and during his early life, the Arabs in the time of Jahiliyyah, that they used to perform something that they knew or they called Hajj, but it was desecrated, and it was desecrated and polluted with shirk. So they had 360 different idols and gods around the Kaaba, and they used to worship them and perform the Hajj as a type of worship, not only of Allah, but with the partners that they had given وَيَذْ بِلَا to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they used to involve in that Hajj that they would circumambulate the Kaaba and with no clothes on, and in the state of nudity. And they would praise their heritage, their forefathers and their fathers and their grandfathers and so forth. So the monastic, or the rites and the acts of Hajj had been desecrated and deteriorated to the point where it was an outright shirk wa'iyadu billah. So when the Messenger ﷺ was given the risalah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he established by, mashallah, the mercy of Allah, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then one of the last things that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ was the obligation of Hajj. And then he himself, alayhi wasallam, performed the Hajj along with approximately 125,000 of his Sahaba, radiallahu anhum ajma'een, and mashallah established for us the methodology that we utilize to perform the Hajj and to fulfill this obligation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until today. Next slide. So there are three types of Hajj that the person may perform. And these are called Qiran, and Hajj and Umrah together, Tamattu, which also is Hajj and Umrah together, and Ifrad, which is Hajj alone. Next slide. So the Qiran, and this is the type that the Prophet ﷺ performed. And when we say Hajj and Umrah together, that is when the Messenger of Allah, والسلام, when he made his intention to perform Hajj, he also made his intention to perform Umrah as well. So when he arrived at Mecca, in the precincts of Mecca, he arrived in the state of Ihram, which we will talk a little bit about in a few minutes. And he brought with him the animals for sacrifice from Medina to Munawwara. So he along with his companions, and may Allah be pleased with them, they made their intention for Hajj, and then they, from the miqat, and that's the third point there, he remained in the state of Ihram from the miqat, Dhul Hulayfa, and until he completed the manasik of Hajj on Yom al-Nar or Yom al-Eid, the day of sacrifice. So from that time he was in the state of Ihram, and that entailed several weeks. So to be in the state of Ihram for several weeks, that is something that is not easy. And we'll talk a little bit more about Ihram. So this is the type of Hajj that the Prophet ﷺ that he performed. The Tamattu, according to the ulama, hafidhahumullah, that this is the preferred type of Hajj because of a statement of the Prophet ﷺ that the meaning of which is that if he were to perform a Hajj again or the next year, he said he would perform Tamattu. And meaning that he would not bring the animals with him that he is going to sacrifice, that he would make the journey from Medina to Munawwara to Mecca for Hajj with the intention of Umrah along with Hajj, but not bring the animals with him. And therefore, and that's the difference between a Qiran and Tamattu, that when you perform Tamattu, you have that niyyah, that intention of Umrah along with Hajj, but you do not bring the animal that you're going to sacrifice or animals with you. So therefore, when you arrive at Mecca and you perform the Umrah, once you complete the Umrah, then you can leave the state of Ihram, that you are no longer in the state of Ihram. And then on the 8th day of the Hijjah, when it is time to begin the manasik of Hajj, then you would re-enter into the state of Ihram from that point, and then you would complete the Hajj. So that makes it a lot easier on the person, because when you are in the state of Ihram, there are certain things that you are prohibited from doing, and therefore, without that prohibition, you are freer when you are not in that state. So again, this is the preferred type of Hajj, the type that most of the people that they make, especially the people that are coming from long distances. So you have, again, you do not bring the animals with you, and you will obtain those animals from the precincts of Mecca, and when you're sacrificing, then you will sacrifice from what you obtain there in the precincts of Mecca. The Ifrad is this intention of Hajj alone without Umrah. So you're coming to make Hajj and you're making Hajj alone, there is no Umrah. And for the person making Ifrad, and the sacrifice is not incumbent upon them. And it's a sunnah, and it's wajib, but it's not a rukn. It's not a necessary element of the Hajj. So if the person has the ways and means to perform the sacrifice, then they may do so. And if not, then they may fast. Right. Preparation for Hajj. And preparation for Hajj, and I just meant this is what came to my mind as far as the preparation for Hajj, and some, there may be some other aspects of it, but we don't want to make it too long. But first of all, intention. That of course the statement of the Messenger ﷺ in Niyat, that verily actions are according to intention. So the intention to perform Hajj should be there with every Muslim, as we mentioned. So I'm not talking I'm not talking about the intention that you make at the point where you are at the miqat and you are actually beginning your journey of Hajj. But all of us right now should have the intention for Hajj. And perhaps we are not making it this year, but we should have that intention, recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask us about fulfilling this obligation and this pillar of our deen. So therefore, we have to have that intention, and that intention is part of the preparation. And if we don't have that intention, then we won't be thinking about, okay, I need to make that preparation. That what are some of the things that I need to do in order to prepare myself to fulfill this obligation and to fulfill this intention. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَإِنَّ خَيْرَ زَادِ التَّقْوَى. And the best preparation is to work on our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be dutiful servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be aware that the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above all the other rights. So when we think about things that they are perhaps coming between us and fulfilling that intention, then we have to think about how, what is the level of importance or the priority of these things as relates to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fulfilling that intention. Because of course, we cannot perform the Hajj, especially from the United States, unless we have some of the other things in place that we're going to talk about. But when we recognize that that right that we owe to Allah should be, and is first and foremost in our hearts and in our minds, then we will begin to make the preparation in the other aspects of our life that are necessary for us to fulfill, mashallah, that obligation. So if we are planning to go for Hajj, then we should take care of our bodies, because Hajj is a physical journey. So we should, mashallah, take care of our health. We should strive to be in good health, because we need to be in good health to give the best effort in our ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And specifically for Hajj, that it is a long journey, it is a strenuous journey. There may be a lot of heat, there may be a lot of walking, there may be a lot of situations that you have to be prepared for that from a physical standpoint, bi'idhnillah. And of course the provision. And we have to make or get together the provision that we need to perform the Hajj. And right now, from the Hajj packages that I've seen for this year, anywhere from $6,500 to $10,000. These are the Hajj packages. $6,500 is one of the low packages. And the average cost that I've seen of the Hajj packages is around $8,000. So that's, realistically speaking, that's how much it's going to cost someone to perform Hajj from the United States. Illa masha'Allah. That's if they're going alone, as in, but if for instance, husband and wife, you can double that. And so however many people going, of course, you can multiply that figure by that. And just as a point of information, when I took the first group that I took for Hajj was in 2000. MashaAllah. At that point, I remember that the price was $2,000. So now it is almost $8,000. So, subhanAllah, it goes every year, it goes up, ila MashaAllah. So when we think about our intention and our preparation, that we have to think about what we are spending our money on. Are we spending our money on things that are not necessary, and on our own entertainment, on things that we could save that money and we could be putting that money aside as part of our preparation for Hajj? Because we know that realistically that we're not going to be able to perform Hajj unless we have X amount of money. So we have to start making the preparation for that. And perhaps, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best our condition, our circumstances financially. But some of us may have that type of money and it's not a problem. But some of us may have to save 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years in order to accumulate that amount of money. And when you go for Hajj, mashallah, you will meet people. I mean, I've met people, mashallah, at Hajj. And Allah has blessed me to go for Hajj, I think 6 times or 7 times. Allah knows best, may Allah accept it. That you meet people when you go for Hajj that, subhanAllah, you find that they have been saving, some of them, all their adult life. they've been saving 10, 15, 20 years so that they can come for Hajj. So they understood the reality of that obligation, and they were making the provision, or making the preparation, and with the provision. Then there is the paperwork that you will have to complete. You have to have in place, and that's specific to this day and time, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and up until even the last 50 years ago or 80 years ago, and that was not a big issue. But now it is an issue, that you have to have the proper paperwork. I just got an email a few days ago from a brother, mashallah, that I have went for Hajj with him before, and I know him for a long time. He takes a Hajj group every year, and he told me that this year the Saudi embassy is not issuing visas to anyone in the United States that does not have a passport. Before, if you had a green card, you could get the visa for Hajj. But he said this year that the people that had paid their money and were prepared to go with him, and they had the green card, they sent them back the package. They said, no, only the people that have passports, American passports, are going to be able to go for Hajj. So he told me that if you know anybody that wants to go, we have some last-minute spaces that have opened up as a result of this. So this is something that is new. That's the first time that I've heard that. Before that, if you had the green card, you could go. So you need to be aware of what is necessary as far as the paperwork. When I first went for Hajj in 1989, may Allah accept it, you could go by yourself. You could send your paperwork to the embassy and tell them you want a visa for Hajj. Fill out the application, and as an individual, mashallah, they send you back the visa. That no longer exists. You have to go with a licensed firm, a licensed agency, and there are only a handful of agencies that have the license from the embassy and the Saudi government here in the United States, that they will issue the visas through these agencies. So as an individual, you can't think that, well, I will go and I'll do it myself. They will not give you the visa if you submit for it just as an individual. You have to go through one of these agencies. There are certain vaccinations that you have to have in order to get the visa. The meningococcal, meningitis vaccination is the only one I know for sure right now that is mandatory. There are others that are recommended, yellow fever, cholera, some of those, but this is a good precaution, but it's not mandatory. However, the meningitis vaccination is mandatory, and once you get it, it's good for 5 years. So if you wanted to go for Hajj or Umrah and you had that within the last 5 years, you should be good. But otherwise, you would have to renew that as well. So those are some of the things that we should think about as far as preparation for the Hajj. So what are the days of Hajj? We know that the Hajj, it can only take place during a certain type of year. And indeed, the ulama, the fuqaha, they define Hajj as, in the English meaning, a specific act of worship that takes place at a specific time and at a specific place in specific manner. So the Hajj itself, yes, it is very specific. So we cannot do Hajj at any time. I have vacation in the summer, I'll do Hajj in the summer. Or I have vacation in December, I'll do Hajj in December. No, we cannot do Hajj at any time. Hajj has to be done during the 8th to the 13th of the Hijjah. And Umrah, mashallah, you can do it anytime. But the Hajj, it must be completed during the days of Hajj, and that is the 8th to the 13th of the Hijjah. And this involves, during those days, what will be taking place, and you have the overnight stay at Mina, and you have the wuquf, the standing at Arafah, you have Yom al-Nahr, the day of sacrifice, and you have Ayyam al-Tashriq, the days, and literally that means the drying of the meat, but those are the days after, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th of the Hijjah. So those are the actual days that the Hajj is taking place. Right now, I think today is the 24th of Dhul Qa'dah. So that means in 1 week, inshallah ta'ala, we begin the 1st of Dhul Hijjah. So you get an idea of what is taking place, that the actual manasik of Hajj will begin on the 8th. So people are leaving now, and you have many of the Hajj groups that are leaving in the coming week, that some of them will go and spend time in Mecca, some of them will go and spend time in Medina to Munawwara. As I mentioned, almost all of the groups that go from the United States, they will be doing tamattu, meaning they will perform Umrah, and then they will perform Hajj. So therefore, they will have some days before the 8th that they will perform Umrah. And inshallah ta'ala, also they will, some of them visit Medina first before going to Mecca. Some of them will go to Mecca first and do the Umrah, and then visit Medina, and then come back to Mecca before the 8th of the Hijjah. But the actual days of Hajj, they are through the 8th through the 13th, inshallah. So, the pillars of Hajj, and Arkan al-Hajj. And according to the ulama and al-imma al-alba, and there is ittifaq, there is consensus or agreement from 3 of the madhahib that the arkan or the pillars of Hajj are 4. And ihram, tawaf al-ziyara, or that's also called the tawaf al-ifada, also known as tawaf al-ifada, and sa'i between Safa and Marwa, and the wukuf, the standing at Arafah. So what does that mean, that it is a rukn, or that arkan of Hajj, or singular rukn, that if any one of these is not completed during the Hajj, then the Hajj is not valid. Then you cannot count that Hajj as fulfilling your obligation. The Hanafiya, they mention only 2 of those, and then that is the tawaf and the wukuf at Arafah. So they mention only 2 of those, but the majority of the A'immah, and they are agreed that these 4 things must be accomplished during the Hajj. So if something happened to prevent you from doing any one of these or any combination of them, then you would have to, you could not then count that Hajj or have completed the obligation. You would have to, inshallah ta'ala, make the intention and make the effort to perform a Hajj and a second time, and bi'idhnillah. So we're talking now a little bit about ihram. And what is ihram? And ihram is actually a state of being. A lot of time when we hear the term ihram, we think about the garments that the person is wearing when they enter in, or when they perform Hajj. But the garments are an indication of ihram. But ihram itself is a state of being that the individual who is performing Hajj, they enter into by virtue of their intention to perform the Hajj, and to complete this act of ibadah. And it is associated with where we are coming from. So this is the map of the mawaqit, the places where you have to, from that point, you would be entering into the state of ihram. So the Messenger of Allah, he came from Medina, and everyone can see Medina at the top in the middle of the map. That this is where the Prophet ﷺ, where he was when he made the intention to make the Hajj. So when he left Medina and for the travel on his animal with all of the Sahaba, they stopped at Dhul Hulayfa. And Dhul Hulayfa is a place outside of Medina. It's very close proximity to Medina Munawwara. It's at this place where the Prophet ﷺ, where he made his intention, his direct intention for Hajj, and he entered into the state of ihram. So once you enter into that state of ihram, then that literally means that there are certain things now that you are prohibited from doing. So your focus at this point is to complete that ibadah, and to complete that worship of Hajj. We can make a comparison to the salah and takbiratul ihram. And when we stand for salah and we raise our hands and we say Allahu Akbar, then we have entered into the salah. And once we enter into the salah, then things that we could do before, we can no longer do. That we can't talk, and we can't eat, we can't drink, we can't turn away from the Qibla, we can't do positions or motions that are not part of the salah. So all of those things which they are permissible, they're yani mubah, and there's no problem with them. But because we are in that state of salah, they are prohibited. We can't do them. So likewise, when the person has made that intention for Hajj and they reach the point where they enter into that state of ihram, then there are certain things that they cannot do. That they cannot wear for the men any clothes that are sewn to fit the body. So once you enter that state, you cannot wear a thobe, you cannot wear a jalabiya or a shirt or a pair of pants, but you can only wear just a garment or a sheet that is not sewn. It's not made to fit the body. You wrap it around yourself. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ, he wore two pieces of cloth, the rida and the izar, and that to cover the upper part of the body and the lower part of the body. So of course you have to cover your aura properly, but not with clothes that are sewn to fit the body. For the women, that they can wear their regular clothes, but they still are entering into that state of ihram. So that same prohibition as far as the garment is not upon the women as it is upon the men. Also for the men, they cannot cover their heads. So you cannot wear the kufi when you enter into the state of ihram. The women should have their face should not be covered when they are in the state of ihram. Also for men and women, you cannot cut your nails, clip your nails. You cannot remove any hair from your body. You cannot enter into a marriage contract or make a proposal. You cannot hunt game, and you cannot go after a gazelle or something while you're on the way if you need food. And of course, we don't have that issue today. But if you're traveling from during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and for many centuries after that, if you're traveling from a distance for the Hajj, and you can see where these mawaqit are, and the Dhul Hulayfa and Rafiq and Dhatul Irq and Qana and Manazil and Yalamlam, that all of these are mawaqit. So if you're coming from the east, once you reach that point, you have to enter into ihram. If you're coming from the south, Yalamlam. If you're coming from Jeddah or from the west, Rabi'a. So all of these are mawaqit. So once you go beyond that point, or you should not go beyond that point, except that you have made your intention, and therefore you have entered into the state of ihram. And once you enter into the state of ihram, then those things that I mentioned, they are prohibited for you. So you will remain in the state of ihram until you complete your umrah. Well, remember I said that, and most of the people, they are making the tamattu, the niyyah of umrah along with hajj. So when you arrive at Mecca, you complete your umrah. And umrah, unlike hajj, is not over several days. Umrah only takes a few hours, depending upon the crowds, basically. But once you arrive at the Kaaba and you begin your tawaf, you can complete the umrah within an hour to 2 hours at the most, probably. So once you complete your umrah, then you could leave the state of ihram. And then on the 8th of the Hijjah, you would re-enter the state of ihram. So that you can see how that makes it a lot easier on the person. If I arrived in Mecca, for instance, on the 4th of the Hijjah, and I completed my umrah, then I have the 5th, 6th, 7th that I'm there in Mecca. But if I had, as the Prophet says, I'm dead, if I had brought the animals with me, then I have to stay in ihram during that time. But if I came with tamattu, then once I complete my umrah, then I can leave ihram. I can put my regular clothes, I can cut my nails, I can cut my hair, I can do just as I would normally, and then re-enter the state of ihram on the 8th of the Hijjah. But otherwise, if I'm doing the other Hajj, the Qiran, then I have to remain in that state. So you can see how that makes it easier for the individual. But this is you skipped one? Okay. This is the second thing that we talked about, tawaf. So this is a picture of the Kaaba, And this is a picture of people performing tawaf. So this just gives you an idea of how many people are there. And subhanAllah, the tawaf, and we mentioned tawaf as ziyarah, and that's the tawaf al-ifadah, the one that you do upon, or excuse me, on the 10th of the Hijjah. But as I mentioned, if you are performing umrah, then when you first arrive in Mecca, and the first thing you do is perform tawaf, and this is called tawaf al-qudum. So that would be the tawaf of umrah, not the tawaf of hajj. But in any case, and this is a picture of people performing tawaf. So they are going around the Kaaba and in a counterclockwise motion. This is the door of the Kaaba, and this in this corner is the Hajar al-Aswad, is the black stone. So the people, you begin your tawaf at the black stone, and you begin your tawaf according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's sunnah to kiss the black stone. So just think about you, an individual in this crowd. You're here, and you want to get to here to kiss the black stone and begin your tawaf. It's not easy, and so therefore it's not mandatory upon you to do so. Now, if you can kiss the black stone, then yes, that is the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But if you cannot, then it doesn't in any way lessen your Hajj. If you cannot kiss it, then you might try to touch it. But even if that becomes too difficult, then you just raise your right hand towards it, facing it, and say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and then you begin your tawaf. So you could begin your tawaf from here, or you could begin your tawaf anywhere in between, as some of the people are way out here. But the main thing is that you would align yourself with the black stone and begin by saying Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and then continue your tawaf around the Kaaba. And when you reach the black stone again, that's one stroke, and of course you complete that 7 times. You notice there's an open area here, and basically there's nobody inside, maybe a couple of people there, but they're not making tawaf. Because when you make tawaf, you have to go around this little half wall here. This is about shoulder height, this wall. And this is said to be part of the original foundations of the Kaaba, meaning that it was actually covering this part at one time. So when it was rebuilt, and it was not built upon this part, this signifies that this would actually be considered as part of the Kaaba. So you cannot make tawaf and cut through here because there is an open area here. But you have to go around this part as well. So the people make tawaf, they go around this Sidr Ismail, and they complete 7 times. And when you complete 7 times, then that completes your tawaf. And the tawaf is like salah. You have to have wudu when you perform tawaf. So for anyone that's going for umrah or for hajj, the wudu, of course, in any ibadah is important. But if you can imagine a crowd like this, and you're right here, and you lose your wudu, then you have a problem. So you have to go now and find a place to make wudu, and then come back and complete your tawaf. So it's good, that from a practical point of view, when people perform hajj, that when they're going to do some of the things like tawaf and sa'i, and those things that they do not, feel their stomachs, but you keep your stomach light, so you try to protect your wudu. Right? Why are you laughing? What is this? Okay, let me do the video. This subhanAllah, and I meant to this gives us the sign of the talbiyah, and I failed to mention that when you enter the state of ihram, you recite the talbiyah. So we want to just hear the talbiyah for that. So this is the talbiyah. That's what the people say, the Hujjaj, that's what they say when they enter that state of ihram. لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. Which means, here I am at thy service, O Lord, here I am at thy service, and thou hast no partners. Thine alone is all praise and all bounty, and thine alone is the sovereignty, thou hast no partners. So once you enter the state of Ihram, it's encouraged that you continue to say those words. You continue to say the Tabbiyah. And you will find people saying it in unison like that. And you will find people that have, maybe they have a group and one of them is saying it out loud and the other ones are following in unison. So inshallah, you may say it like that. You may say it to your, just to yourself, but with an audible voice. That the Prophet ﷺ, he said it with an audible voice, and the Sahaba, they also did so with an audible voice. Once you arrive at Mecca to perform your Umrah and the Tawaf, then you cease with the Tabbiyah, and as you are performing the Tawaf, you may make dua, and you may make the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you may recite Quran, and the only thing that is mentioned on the Prophet ﷺ, authentically, the most common thing mentioned authentically about the Prophet ﷺ in the Tawaf is that between the Yemeni corner and the Hajj al-Aswad, he used to say the dua, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, and they give us in the dunya what is good, and in the akhirah what is good, and save us from the punishment of the hellfire. So this is just a little map of the area around the Kaaba. And this is, I mentioned, the black stone is here embedded in the corner. This is the door of the Kaaba. You are going in that motion, and that's the Hijr Ismail. So you cannot go through here. You have to go around it. And this is what is called the Yemeni corner, because actually it's pointing towards Yemen. And between this area and here is where the Prophet ﷺ, in the narration mentions that he said that dua. He said that dua, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So of course that's 7 times, and after 7 times it's sunnah to make the 2 rak'ah of salat behind Maqam Ibrahim. So behind Maqam Ibrahim, you find a spot and you pray 2 rak'ah. But as you saw the picture, can you go back to that picture of the Tawaf? Yeah. Okay, this is the Maqam Ibrahim here. So you can imagine, if I'm trying to stand here and pray 2 rak'ah, it's not going to work. I'm going to get knocked over and stepped on and so forth. So if you want to pray 2 rak'ah, you can pray it anywhere back here. So you don't have to be right next to it, but you can just try to get yourself aligned with it and pray, inshallah. And then after that also you can go and drink from Zamzam. The Zamzam, go back to the map, the other map. Yeah. The Zamzam used to be where inside the masjid there was some stairs that took you down to an area where you could see where the Zamzam well is coming from, where the water, the Zamzam is actually coming from. But that area has since been closed over, so it's no longer there. But the Zamzam, the water, Zamzam water is available and throughout the masjid, throughout the haram. So they have coolers, they have fountains. All of the water that you'll find inside to drink is Zamzam. So you can drink the Zamzam from any of those points. And when you drink it, of course, you should make the dua. And drinking the Prophet, he drank it in 3 sips or 3 times, saying Bismillah, Alhamdulillah. And that you drink as much as you can. And don't just sip it, but you should drink it, mashallah. Right. Okay. This is the sa'i. So we talked about ihram, we talked about tawaf. This is sa'i. This is the going between Safa and Marwa. So you see, when you think about Safa and Marwa, we hear the story about the 2 hills and the story of Hajj, may Allah be pleased with her. So it's not like that now. You know, it's not a an area where there's actually hills and you're outside. Everything is enclosed. So there's a long, covered area. And this, I think this is on the ground level. There's another area on top of this, a second floor. But on one end is Safa and on the other end is Marwa. So part of the Hajj, of course, as mentioned from the Arkan, is to do the sa'i, and to go between Safa and Marwa, and that you go between the two hills. There is actually an elevated area at the end of this hallway, or at the end of this area, and there's an elevated area at the end, at the other end, which signifies Safa and Marwa. So you begin your sa'i at Safa and you end at Marwa, and from one to the other is considered one show. So you not go there and back is one. No, from Safa to Marwa is one, and Marwa back to Safa is two, like that. So you would begin at Safa and you would complete 7 at Marwa. And you might notice here too these green lights. And then in the distance, you see there's some more green lights. So the area between those two lighted sections is the area where, according to the riwayah, that Hajj radiallahu anha, when she was going between the two, there was an area where she quickened her pace. So she quickened her pace because she could not see Ismail where she had left him. So she didn't like not being able to see him. So she hurried up until she could once again get to the point where she could see him. So she quickened her pace during that area. So also it is from the sunnah to quicken your pace during that area. Not a flat out run, but just quicken your pace, inshallah ta'ala. So this is the side. You can see again the number of people. This is a good depiction of how it will be during Hajj. Maybe even more crowded than that. You will find the same thing on the next floor as well. And even some people, they do the sa'i on the roof, and on the roof of the haram, of the masjid. That's another picture of the sa'i. So mashallah, you can see that the pilgrim, you can see the men in the ihram and the garments. MashaAllah. Tayyib. The fourth pillar is the wukuf at Arafah. And this the only picture we have of Arafah? Okay. This is actually Jabal al-Rahmah. So this does not give you the best picture of Arafah, because Arafah is a big open plain. And subhanAllah, all of the Hujjaj, they have to be at Arafah. As you mentioned, that this is one of the arkan, one of the necessary elements of the Hajj, that if you did not come to Arafah on the 9th of the Hijjah before sunset, then your Hajj is not acceptable, it's not valid. But because this is the area where the Prophet ﷺ, he stood and he gave his address to the people when he performed his Hajj from the elevated point on Jabal al-Rahmah, and the white pillar there is just to signify that this is indeed Jabal al-Rahmah, because there are some other small mountains or elevated areas at Arafah. But Arafah is a large, huge plain where on that day, of course, you're going to have more than 2 million people. So this really doesn't give you a good idea about the number of people at Arafah, because only a fraction of them actually try to go and climb the mountain. And so you see there are quite a few people up there, and it's not easy to get up there. But the great majority of the people, they are down in the flat, in the plain area of Arafah. And one of the things also to note about Arafah, as far as just from a physical standpoint, that if you perform Hajj in the summer months, it gets extremely hot there, extremely hot, and upwards of 120, 125 degrees. So you have to be, you have to be hydrated, and you have to think about those things as well. You want to make sure you drink plenty of water. You want to make sure that you don't try to carry too much stuff, that type of thing. But this is, mashallah, the wukuf and at Arafah. No? No? Okay. So, okay, go back to the video. Oh, that's another picture of Arafat. At Arafah, yeah, the Prophet ﷺ, he went to Arafah on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, and we'll go back to that slide about the days. Yes, okay. So again, regarding the days, that on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, the pilgrims go to Mina. And they go to Mina, and you find your camp at Mina. And the Prophet ﷺ, he performed 4 salats at Mina, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. And so, and those he made them qasr, but he did not join them. So he prayed Dhuhr at its proper time, 2 rakah, Asr at its proper time, 2 rakah, Maghrib at its proper time, 3 rakah, and Isha at its proper time, 2 rakah. And he spent the night, an overnight stay at Mina. So that's the 8th day going into the 9th night and the 9th day. So he spent the night then, and on the morning of the 9th, he prayed Fajr there, also at Mina. And then after the sun had risen, and then he began making his way towards Arafah. So Arafah is the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. So when he got to Arafah, the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed Dhuhr and Asr, and Qasr with Jama'. And he prayed both of them, and he prayed the Dhuhr with Adhan and the Iqamah and 2 rakah, and then a second Iqamah for Asr and 2 rakah. So he prayed them, he shortened and joined them at the time of Dhuhr. Then he, alayhi sallam, entered the Arafah, and he remained in Arafah all day until sunset. So he remained in Arafah until the sunset, and most of the time he was making dua. So the ulama, they mentioned that in Arafah, and the best thing for you to do is make dua. And you raise your hands, face the Kaaba, and face the Qibla, and make dua. Of course, you're not going to stand in dua for 5-6 hours straight. I mean, you have to take care of your needs and maybe take some rest. But not like some people, you see laid out, sleeping and snoring at Arafah, and they don't know when they get the chance to come there again, or if they will get the chance to come there again. I remember one time I was at Arafah, and there was a guy selling newspapers, and I thought to myself, this is strange. He's selling newspapers at Arafah. Who's going to use their time at Arafah to read a newspaper? Subhanallah. So you have to remain focused, and you have to remember that, again, you are still in that state of ihram. And that state of ihram means that your focus is that you want to complete this act of ibadah. And in accordance with the methodology of the Messenger ﷺ. And according to the hadith, and the meaning of the hadith, that there is no day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he delivers more souls, or grants deliverance from the hellfire for more souls than on the day of Arafah. So that's the day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is, mashallah, magnificent. That this is the day to gain the forgiveness of Allah and the mercy of Allah, and bi'idhnillah, the entrance and the permission for the entrance into paradise, bi'idhnillah. So that's for the ones who are at Arafah, and also for those of us whom we are not performing Hajj. We still can gain the virtue of that day. That's why, of course, we are encouraged to follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and fast on the day of Arafah, and bi'idhnillah, which of course is the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah. So after the standing at Arafah, the sun sets, and the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he did not make Maghrib at Arafah, but he left Arafah after sunset, and on his way back towards Mina, he stopped at a place and he spent the night there. He spent the night, Muzdalifah, yeah, having a senior moment there. He stopped at Muzdalifah. Muzdalifah is not mentioned here because it's a sunnah. You do not have to stay there if it's a hardship for you. Many of the people, if they're older, or they have a medical condition, or they have something that causes it to be under hardship on them, then they can return to their camp at Mina. But the Prophet ﷺ, he spent the night at Muzdalifah. Muzdalifah is just an open place. There's nothing specific to do there from the manasik of Hajj. It's just a place where he slept. He prayed Maghrib and Isha when he arrived there. Again, joining them and shortening the Isha. Then he spent the night there. He gathered the stones that he was going to throw on the next day from Muzdalifah, from to stone the Jamrat. And then he prayed the Fajr there, and then he departed for Mina. And that would bring us to the 10th. So on the day of sacrifice, there are 4 things that the Prophet ﷺ that he did. And he threw the stones at the Jamrat, the small Jamrat, which is the Sughra, the smaller one. And 7 stones, and at each throw you say, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and you throw the stones, and that of course is symbolic of the stoning of Shaitan, and the commemoration of the stoning of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That is when Shaitan approached Ibrahim to try to deter him from fulfilling the order of Allah in sacrificing his son. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, he took the stones and he threw them at Shaitan. So the Jamrah is just a large stone pillar that it symbolizes the Shaitan. It is not Shaitan. It's a stone pillar. So if you go there and you see the people throwing shoes and umbrellas and cursing it and this and that, that they are just kind of overzealous in their Hajj. But it's an act of ibadah that we do with understanding the meaning behind it. So that's the first thing the Prophet ﷺ did. And then he sacrificed the animal. So the first thing is to throw the stones. Then the sacrifice. Most of the people who go from the United States, they don't actually go and sacrifice the animal themselves. They may depute someone from the group to go and do the sacrifice for them. And that's usually the case. So once you know that the sacrifice has been done on your behalf, then you can shave or shorten your hair. So the order of the Prophet ﷺ was to stone the Jamrat, to sacrifice the animal, to shave his head, and then he went to Mecca for the Tawaf and the Sa'i. So that's the order that the Prophet ﷺ did those things, those 4 things to be completed on the day of sacrifice. But the ulama, they mentioned that if you did them in any other order, then it's okay. And that comes from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where when he was performing his Hajj on that day, many people came to him and they said that I did this before I did that, or I did stoning and then I cut my hair, or I did the sacrifice before I did the stoning. And they mentioned so many different scenarios to the Prophet ﷺ, and he told each of them, la haraj, and that is, basically, it's all right. That you did it, alhamdulillah, it's all right. So we have the order that the Prophet ﷺ did them. That's the preferred order. But again, if you did them in any other order, inshallah ta'ala, khair. But those are the 4 things that you want to accomplish on that day. And that's a difficult task. And I can tell you from my experience that from Fajr until about 12 midnight, trying to complete those 4 things. And that's just from the crowds, just because of so many people. And then if you are walking, or if you're trying to get from Mina to where your camp is to Mecca, it's probably about a 45 to an hour walk. But if you are trying to do it in vehicle, it could take you 5 to 6 hours because of the traffic. It's my understanding now that they have the trains, and I have not been back for Hajj since they have instituted the trains. And I think the trains will make it easier, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. But there's like a loop train now that goes from Mina to Arafah to Mecca, like that. So inshallah, that should make it easier. So you complete those things on the 10th. You come back to Mina after completing those things and spend the night. That would be the night of the 11th. And then the day of the 11th you spend at Mina, and you throw the Jamrat, you throw the stones at all 3 of the Jamrat, and Al-Sughra, Al-Wusta, Al-Kubra, and the small one, the middle one, the big one, and each of them in the same fashion, 7 stones, and one at a time, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. So that's a total of 21 stones that you need for each day that you spend at Mina. These are not big, you know, rocks. They're small stones. And now, mashallah, they have it very well coordinated where you enter one way and you come out one way. I can recall when I performed Hajj that on one occasion it was myself and Mujahid. We were approaching Mina. We were approaching the Jamarat, and the people were telling us, you know, go back, go back. The people are dying. They said people are dying, and because of the crowd. And at that time we had our son with us, Mujahid. He was 40 days old, so we were carrying him, and we were performing Hajj. And they were like, you can't take that baby. You know, he's going to die. You know? So, but it can get very difficult. And then you get in there and you know, people are throwing big rocks. So you can imagine if you're turning around and a big rock hits you in the forehead, you know, it's not pleasant. But so you should have a small stone, and you don't have a big rock. And you should get close enough where you are able to throw at the Jamarat, and not where it's probably going to hit somebody else. But the way they have it done now, it's much more organized, and I think there's a lot less injury. And that was one of the stoning of the Jamarat on those 2 days, the 11th and the 12th. That used to be one of the most dangerous times of Hajj. People getting stampeded, people getting you know, hit with the rocks. Because on the third day, of course, most of the people have already left. They leave after 2 days, so the third day is not bad. But for those 2 days, it used to be very bad. But now, everyone, when you go, inshallah, you should don't be too concerned about that, because it's much easier now. So the days of Tashriq are the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th. So you're going to throw on the 11th all three. You're going to throw on the 12th all three. And if you want to leave after those 2 days, then you may do so. Once you leave, and then your Hajj is complete. Oh, and I should mention that once you finish the 4 things on Yom al-Nahar, on the 10th, those 4 things I mentioned, and the throwing to the one Jamrah, the small one, the cutting of your hair, the sacrifice, the cutting of your hair, and the tawaf. You finish those 4 things, you leave the state of Ihram. You are no longer in the state of Ihram. So on the 11th and the 12th, you have to throw, but you are, you know, just in your regular clothes, and you are no longer in the state of Ihram. So when you finish throwing on the 12th, then you are free to leave Mina. But if you remain at Mina until sunset, then you have to spend the night again and throw again on the 13th. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that in the Quran, وَمَنْ تَعَجَّلَ فِي يَوْمَيْنِ, and whoever hastens to complete in 2 days, then there is no sin upon him. وَمَنْ تَأَخَّرَ, and the one who remains for the 3rd day, فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ, then there is no sin upon him. So most of the people, I would say about 90% of the people, after the 2nd day, they leave. I stayed one time for the 3rd day, and subhanAllah, it was like, you know, a ghost town compared to the previous day. And you can imagine, 2 million people, and then you wake up in the morning and there's only a handful of people there. So most of the people, they leave after the 2nd day. And once you leave Mina, then you have completed the manasik of Hajj. You are then probably going to spend some time in Mecca, which is good, mashallah. Or you may travel and visit Medina Munawwara. But the last thing you should do before you leave Mecca is to perform what is called Tawaf al-Wida, and the farewell pilgrimage. So you try to make the last thing that you do before you are leaving Mecca is to perform one final tawaf. And that, you're not in the state of Ihram, but this is called the farewell tawaf, and this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and to get the benefit and the ajr of performing the tawaf the 7 times around and the Kaaba. So you try to make that as much as you can the last thing that you do. So like if you have a flight from Jeddah and in the evening, then don't try to make it to the point where you miss your flight or something. No, but if you know that I'm going to be leaving Mecca this afternoon at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, then maybe after Dhuhr you go and you make your tawaf, and that's your final tawaf before you leave, inshallah. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that we didn't cover tonight. It's just kind of the general, introduction regarding the Hajj. But inshallah ta'ala, we all have the intention to meet that obligation. Again, when you are able to go, bi'idhnillah, you will be with a group. Inshallah, you will have a guide, and all the questions that come up, inshallah ta'ala, you will have somebody there to answer those questions. Inshallah ta'ala, bi'idhnillah. But this gives you a general understanding of what it is that we are obligated to do and how, inshallah ta'ala, we are to carry it out in accordance with the guidance from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam. وَكُلِّ قَوْلِ هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَغَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Inshallah ta'ala, we actually passed the time of the Iqamah, but if anyone has a question, we'll take just a few minutes to answer any questions, inshallah. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم. Okay, we didn't call it that yet. Yeah, you can call the end, and we take a couple of minutes for the questions, inshallah. What then?
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Allah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Allah.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
أشهد أن لا
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
بارك الله فيك. اللهم لا بهدي So inshallah ta'ala, brothers and sisters have retreated to the ladies area. Are there any questions, inshallah? We begin from my right over here. Something in Arafah? Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wasalam. Of course, the main sunnah in Arafah is the dua. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave a brief sermon at Arafah, and I'm sure most of you are aware of the farewell sermon of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is one that is very important for us to remember what he told the Sahaba on that day, as not only the text of his speech or his khutbah, what he said, but also how he ended it, and that those who are, in the meaning that those who are present should tell those who are absent. So it's something that the Prophet ﷺ intended not only for his Sahaba radiallahu anhum, but for all of us. So we should be aware of what the Prophet ﷺ spoke about on that day. And when amongst the groups that are there, you will find that usually amongst the group, they will choose someone amongst them and to deliver a brief sermon at Arafah. And if it is, of course, on a Friday, then you would have the regular sermon as well, the Jummah. And there's a large masjid, of course, at Arafah as well. So it's a huge masjid. But there's some discussion amongst the ulama. And the masjid itself is not actually within the precincts of Arafah, because the riwayat on the Hajj of the Prophet ﷺ is that, and he prayed again the Dhuhr and the Asr, Khasr wa Jama', and then he entered Arafah. So that masjid is built where he prayed, and then Arafah is immediately behind the masjid. So that's the main things. It's not necessary for the person to go to Jabal al-Rahmah. A lot of people, they make a lot of effort. Some of them even may injure themselves trying to climb the mountain. But the ulama, they always stress, every year to people that, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that I am standing here, and the whole Arafah is a place of standing. So it's not necessary that you try to climb Jabal al-Rahmah, and the mountain of mercy, and to make dua from that particular vantage point. But anywhere in Arafah that you make dua is good. I think stress should be mentioned or put on that you should not waste your time at Arafah, because there are a lot of factors. A lot of people, very crowded. It's hot. You're tired. You're thirsty. You're hungry. People get irritable. Sometimes fights break out. This type of thing. So you have to remain focused and remember that this is just a few short hours. And that this day, Yawm al-Arafah, is, according to many of the ulama, when they talk about the fadl, afdal al-yawm, what is the best day in the year, that many of them, they say Yawm al-Arafah, and that is the best day in the year. So inshallah ta'ala, you should never waste that time. And so you should spend it in the best way, inshallah. No, go. So what's up? Okay. Okay, alhamdulillah. Yeah, because actually, subhanAllah, I have not, of course I've seen the masjid, but I've never entered the masjid, subhanAllah. So it's a very huge masjid. So the brother is saying that part of it actually is in Arafah, and part of it is not. So they actually have the signs posted inside the masjid to let you know that if you go beyond this point, you will be in Arafah, and if you come out of that point, then you will not be in Arafah. Because I'm sure you're going to find some people who try to spend the day in the masjid where it's air conditioned. No. Any other questions, brothers? No. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wasalam. Well, I mean, all of the places, once you enter the precincts of Mecca, then, we have to remember that, mashallah, this is the most blessed place, for us as Muslims. And that this is one salah in Mecca and is equivalent to 100,000 salah. So this just gives you an understanding of the barakah, the blessing and the virtue of Mecca. I'm not sure of the exact place you're talking about, but in one authentic narration there is from the Prophet ﷺ, there is mentioned about the area between the Black Stone and Bab al-Kaaba, and the area between the Black Stone and the door of the Kaaba. That particular area is an area where you should make dua. So inshallah ta'ala, that's one of the areas of virtue, of course, and anywhere, in the precincts of Mecca, in the proximity of the Kaaba itself, and that all of those areas are blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
The idea that there's a specific place where the dua is answered, I think, I'm sure. My idea of dua is that anywhere you make dua is answered. You don't have to be in Makkah, you don't have to be anywhere. There's places that it's encouraged to do dua. The idea that there's a specific place where dua is answered. What do you think of that?
No, I think that Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wasalam. I don't know of any narration on the Prophet ﷺ where he said that, go to this place to have your dua answered. No. As you mentioned, there are narrations that point to the virtue of certain places. So just like the virtue of certain times, and the time at Yom al-Jum'ah, and when the dua is answered, or when the last third of the night, and when we make dua, or when the rain is falling, and all of these are mentioned as opportune times to perform, to make dua. But to try to give emphasis to any particular place, no, we don't find that in the authentic Sunnah of the Messenger. Now, yes, inshallah, if you were to die at Mecca or in Medina Munawwara, then they will bury you there, unless you make some specific arrangements otherwise. But they will certainly bury you without any problem. And of course, when you go for Hajj, at every salah, there's janazah. Almost at every salah, mashallah, the muezzin will give the call that the salah on the janazah, salat al-mayyit, that they're going to be a janazah. So they're ongoing. And anytime you have that many people, subhanallah, it's inevitable, illa mashallah, that some people will meet the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there. And I would think, and Allah knows best, that would be a blessing and a mercy from Allah, to die with that intention of fulfilling that obligation from Allah, and then dying in the act of doing so, or immediately after doing so. Because, of course, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in Hajj Mabrur, laysa lahu jazaa illa jannah, the Hajj that is accepted by Allah, then the reward for that is none other than the paradise. So, mashallah, it's a great blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the opportunity to perform and the Hajj bi'idhnillah. And I want to go on record as saying tonight, it's been my intention for the past couple of years to try to get a group together and perform Hajj with a group from Knoxville. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not brought that to fruition to this point, but anyone that has intention, that's still my intention, inshallah, that we want to get a group together and perform Hajj, and it's from Knoxville, inshallah. So we are working towards that for next year, inshallah ta'ala, in 1436 bi'idhnillah. Nasallahu taqabbal minna jami'an. The actual days of Hajj are 6 days, but for us, of course, you have to include the travel. So most of the groups that go from here, they are 2 to 3 weeks. So anywhere from 14 to 21 days is usually the duration for the groups that go from here, and that's because you take into consideration the 6 days of Hajj itself, and then travel days, and then most of the groups, they make an endeavor to to visit Medina, the city of the Prophet ﷺ as well. So usually at least 2 weeks to accomplish that, inshallah. Yeah. Naam yakum. Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Now. Well, not when they're in the state of ihram, but I assume that many people get married over there. In the Muslim world, you will find that the days around the Eidain are days that people sometimes plan their weddings, and that they get married in the proximity of Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha, because it's already days of celebration, and sometimes weddings are planned around that time. But for the people who are, and for the Hujjaj, the people that are performing Hajj, then of course, and their focus is to complete, that worship, that pillar of the Deen. And then if you're thinking about getting married, it may distract you a little bit. Allah knows best. So please keep that in mind, that we want to try to take a group from here next year, inshallah, and we'll be working towards that goal, bi'idhnillah. Whatever I've said is good and correct is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and any mistakes are from myself. So I ask Allah to forgive me for those, and ask you to seek that forgiveness for me from Him as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the benefit of the wisdom of His book, and the benefit of the wisdom of the words of His Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, and to grant us the tawfiq and the hidayah to understand them properly and to put them into practice. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم واستغفروه إن الله لغفور رحيم. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم.